students. Good morning and welcome to the lesson 4, that is Louis Pasteur, Conqueror of Disease, written by E.H. Carter. Source: Pioneers of the Modern World. This is a lesson for 10th English, that is first language in Karnataka State Board. So, we are coming to fourth lesson, Louis Pasteur, Conqueror of Disease. Who conquered the disease, just like it is pandemic and it is dangerous to mankind. See, I'm going to read the lesson with all pronunciation skills and punctuations. Just listen carefully while I'm reading the lesson, and this is model reading by the teacher. On the field of battle in one of his campaigns, Napoleon decorated for bravery a certain tanner named Pasteur. This brave soldier had an equally brave son, Louis Pasteur, born 7 years after Waterloo. He was not a soldier, but he was a fighter. He fought disease. He devoted his life to the study of what we sometimes call germs, which men of science call bacteria, a Greek word meaning little rods. Bacteria are vegetable organisms, little rod-shaped plants which exist in the air, water, and soil, and in the bodies of animals and plants. Some, but not all, are the causes of diseases. Some convert matter into food for plants. Louis Pasteur had a very busy and interesting life. He not only made some existing discoveries about germs, but he was able to use his discoveries in very practical ways. He worked hard in his laboratory with test tubes and all kinds of experiments, but nearly all the time he was working to help people who were suffering in some special way from disease. Among the people whom Pasteur was able to help were brewers, breeders of silkworms, and cowkeepers, all of whom were trying to carry on important industries in France. Pasteur was always very proud of being able to help his country in this way. Louis Pasteur, born in a little French country town, was interested in chemistry when he was very young. After studying hard in Paris and showing great promise, he began to teach and lecture as professor of chemistry. He became a professor at Strasbourg in Alsace, and he married a wife who was always to be his closest companion and assistant. Pasteur was deeply interested in all the new experiments that were being made in chemistry and decided to solve some of the difficult problems that were worrying chemists and other scientists. Sometimes he used to sit for hours, quite silent and motionless, thinking hard about one of his difficulties. He found this the easiest way to solve a problem, and when he thought of a solution, his kind, tired-looking face would brighten with pleasure and excitement, and he would rush around to tell his discovery to his wife and to others who were helping him. In 1854, Pasteur was appointed head of a college of science at Lille, a busy manufacturing town in the northeast of France. He was pleased about this because he always felt that trades and industries could be helped very much by the researches of men of science. His chance to be useful soon came. Pasteur, as a young chemist, had always been interested in the problems of why and how living things decay, why milk turns sour, why meat goes bad, why wine ferments. He started to give some lectures in Lille on fermentation. One of the chief industries in Lille was the manufacture of alcohol from beetroot, and he was fortunate in being able to carry out experiments in some of the breweries. One manufacturer consulted Pasteur about his beer, which was turning out badly, and Pasteur, by helping this brewer, managed to discover all sorts of things that he did not know before about yeast. Yeast is used to make beer foam and bread rise slightly. Pasteur became certain that yeast was alive, made up of tiny living cells. When these cells were healthy, the yeast acted well, but if they were diseased, the yeast and the beer went wrong. After a few years, Pasteur was made director of scientific studies at a famous college in Paris. He was still thinking about decay and yeast and germs, and one of the problems that he was trying to answer was this: do germs form from other germs, or do they just come of themselves? People like Pasteur believed that germs were carried in the air and might infect other things that came in contact with them. Others believed in what they call spontaneous generation. That is, they believed that germs had no parents, but just occurred by themselves. Pasteur proved that he was right by a very simple and clever experiment. He put some soup into some bottles and then he boiled it in order to destroy any germs that might already be in the soup. After that, he heated and pulled out the neck of each bottle until it formed a long, narrow neck with a big bend in the middle. The soup remained there for a long time and it never went bad, as it would have done if it had been standing in a bowl in the kitchen. That, said Pasteur, is because there are no parent germs in the soup and they cannot reach it because of the bend in the long tube. So he took one of the bottles and spilled a little of the soup down the tube so that it settled in the bend. This soup went bad. We often speak of dust traps. Well, the bend in the tube was a dust trap because the dust, which as we now know may carry germs with it, would get as far as the bend but no farther, and it settled there and infected the soup. This is only one of the many hundreds of experiments which Pasteur made to show how full the air is of dust particles and how germs may be carried by this dust. One very useful experiment was made to show the difference between pure and stale air. Pasteur again filled some bottles with soup. He took some into a little hotel bedroom where the air hardly ever changed, broke their necks off so that the air could enter freely, and after a few minutes sealed them up again. He then took some bottles into a field nearby and did the same with them. Finally, he opened some on the top of a high mountain and again sealed them up. What was the result? When they were examined, the bottles opened in the hotel bedroom were full of soup which had gone completely mouldy. The bottles opened in the field were mouldy, but not quite so bad. Those opened on the mountain had no germs in them at all. Nowadays, we pay a great deal of attention to pure air, open windows, to freedom from dust, to garden stays. Pasteur was one of the first to show how necessary all these are if we are to fight against germs and disease.